Well, hello, Briggs Road Baptist Church, and any guests that may be joining us tonight. I got a little bit of a late start, had some technical difficulties, seems that way, but patiently endure that. Tonight's short little devotional is I'm going to throw you a little bit of a curveball. I know we went off a little bit of our normal pattern on these little short devotionals of doing like the Psalm of the day, but I thought I might look at a proverb, the book of Proverbs. And so I just looked at the 27th, Proverbs 27, and thought I would consider just a couple lines. It's actually very much in line with the sermon pastor preached to begin the new year, and about how we are to reckon our time and to submit ourselves to the Lord's plan, but also to recognize the responsibility that we have with the giftings He has given us to use all of the faculties and abilities He's entrusted to us to plan properly. But the proverb tonight, that we're going to consider in verses 1 and 2. Just very briefly, we'll restate that point, but also look at the inner workings of the heart and really what's going on there. So Proverbs 27 begins this way. It says, "Do not boast about tomorrow, for you do not know what a day may bring. Let another praise you, and not your own mouth, a stranger, and not your own lips." And so, what the writer of Proverbs here is saying is speaking about the condition of our heart and how we can many times fall into the error of being puffed up and being exalting ourselves. And it really lends itself to pride and arrogance if we put our finger on the issue. And so basically, what the as is typical in Hebrew, especially in the Proverbs, you will have a contrast, usually in about a two-line statement. So it'll be a statement. It'll be something to don't do, but then a statement of something to do. So it'll show you the teaching by giving a negative and a positive, or a contrasting, oftentimes to bring out the point. And there's so many of these, and there's different styles and different types. We won't get into that now for a little short devotion that we'll be doing. But basically, what the writing is talking about is that boasting has a direct correlation to pride. And one, in the first verse, you have boasting about tomorrow as if you could control it. Now, we know instinctively that we cannot make the sun go up. We can't extend the hours in the day. We do a whole lot of things. We can give artificial lighting, but it does not change the fact of the 24 hours of the day that God, as the creator, has made. And this call to wisdom, true wisdom. Now, there's a lot of context in this proverb, and the ones coming alongside are the groupings here about friendship and those kind of things. But here we have some good, just solid wisdom that calls for humility before God. Humility, in as much as that we understand that He controls our comings and our goings, when we rise up, when we lay back down. He ordains the days, the times, and the seasons. We operate within His sovereign providence of what He has set up and created and ordained. So wisdom would tell us that yes, it's right and proper that we are to make best use of the time. The Proverbs, the Bible's, it is full of exhortations to be industrious, to be hardworking, to not be lazy, but also to understand that when we do so, that we are understanding we are using the giftings ability God has given to us and entrusted to us. And it's not something that's self-generated. We have this very much ingrained in our culture of being a self-made man, of pulling ourselves up by the bootstraps, of calling the shots. We very much so tend to exalt, just like, hey, I'm going to point to the fences. I know that when I make contact, this is what's happening. And being the masters of our own ship, so to speak, king of the castle, that kind of thing. So again, arrogance is where we think too high of ourselves. But then listen in the wisdom given in the second verse. Let another praise you. So thinking that we control everything, that we orchestrate, and we have these control issues. So many at various degrees have some serious control issues. And it's not this just pie in the sky, silly thing that's just let go and let God, that kind of thing. First of all, you understand that you're not the one letting go and giving God anything, right? He controls it all. So we have a lot of bad theology that we need to work through. What we understand is that we are in humble submission as the Lord gives us time, resources, the abilities, and such. But again, getting back to the point that arrogance thinks too much of ourselves and too little of others. So we puff ourselves up. We think too little of God and his sovereign power, his will, of how his goodness. And really, if you think about what that cuts at, when we figure that, hey, I'm going to do this, I have these things because of my own doing. And tomorrow I'm going to be at this place. The day after that, I'm going to be at this place. I will be here. I will do those things. And in our heart, when that has elevated to when something upsets that we don't function well. It gets us all twisted up in the knots. We get angry and frustrated, and something has frustrated our plans. When in reality, now it is frustrating when things happen that we didn't, necessarily have planned out. But getting to the heart that understands, okay, let's take a reset here and understand that sometimes, there's a good adage that I think we all have a lot of wisdom to understand, is that, when things interrupt us, people are not interruptions as much, people are opportunities. And we understand perhaps this is a meeting. I can't tell you how many times where, even on the simplest levels, like where I'm trying to get somewhere and a traffic light hold me up. Traffic is longer than I might have thought. Then when you get up to that spot, something that was delaying me, there could have been something that would have caused great harm, and that delay was for a purpose. Other times where you have been, or where I've been in a situation where I wasn't going to be at a particular place or at a particular time. And as it happened, I would run into somebody that we both had great encouragement or great time together that I otherwise may not have had. So it's understanding that we really need to try to understand where we fit into God's good and sovereign layout for the day and for our lives, and that we are to also be in submission and to his word. But also, when we think so little of others, think so little of God and the way that things have lined up and circumstances he's brought into our lives, whatever that case may be. But also where we sit there and we talk so much about ourselves, how great we are. You really don't need other people to come along and give that encouragement. It robs them of the blessing of doing that. It shows the pride and arrogance in our heart. Not to mention that when I'm tooting my own horn, that I'm not even trusting that you're going to do it properly, so I got to make sure I got to do that myself. You want a job right, do it yourself, kind of thing. Sometimes that's okay, but many other times, especially what our passage is talking about tonight, is take a breath, don't be so quick. Certainly check the pride that's in all of our hearts. And how we do that is a great remedy to that is spending time with the Lord, communing with God, seeking his will according to his word. And so we learn to value others. We learn to certainly value the preciousness of what a gift of life every day is that the Lord gives us. Paul, when he was writing to the Corinthians, a passage Celine and I were reading through Corinthians right now, my wife and I are reading through Corinthians, and there's a passage in 1 Corinthians 4 where Paul he's really chastising the Corinthians for being so puffed up, and they're assessing Paul's ministry, Apollos' ministry, and basically he says to them, he says, what do you have that was not given to you? You think that you have set this all up according to your own abilities. You have nothing that has not been given to you. So understand your place. And we'd see Paul's later correction to them. They very much were puffed up in pride about a great deal of things. And that's true that so many of us. But Pride is a horrendous offense to God, and it is very destructive. It's out of bounds and it's out of character for professing Christians. So we must really fight against that. We must really recognize it in all of its various forms. It is deceptive. It is subtle. And sometimes it's just out and out. Got to have my way, and all kind of ways we could consider for tonight. But in keeping with our short devotionals, we want to keep this as simple as possible. But also understanding that, again, I just want to reiterate the point. I think Pastor brought this out in his message very well as well, that there's nothing wrong with planning. It's just doing so with a proper perspective and understanding of who controls, who ordains times. Again, the Lord even spoke to this when he was talking about the cost of discipleship, when he said, how many of you, when you go to build a tower, do you not sit down and consider the cost, right? You lay these things out, you plan them out. And what he was teaching on a spiritual issue, he was using a very real practical issue. It's very true that, and very just good common sense that, hey, to do something like that, it's very important that we do something like that. So in Luke 14. So we just want to, our exhortation for today is to thank God for the good gifts he's given us. Thank God for the things he has brought into our lives, that he has brought into our day, that if we're to use our time wisely, that we're to understand that we are working within God's plan, that we can have ours, but they must be submitted to his will and his will for our lives and his purposes for us, to glorify him and to live obediently and to live in communion with him, in partnership with him, in submission to him, and a heart of gratitude and thankfulness instead of entitlement and arrogance and pride, and to live in community, to come along with other folks and to appreciate their giftings and let others commend what you have done. And we don't do things for the praise of men. We do them for the praise of God. But we all benefit when someone uses a gifting of encouragement to lift us up. I know that's very true in my life. And I trust that's true in yours as well. So James is considering this in his passage in James 4. That very same truth he was examining as well. He was saying, listen, humble yourself and let the Lord exalt you. Writer of Proverbs is saying, basically, humble yourself, live in a spirit of humility and a lifestyle of humility, and great benefit and blessing will derive from that. So I pray that you are staying safe and well. Remember to pray for one another. Brothers and sisters, as we thank God, let's not be boastful about tomorrow, and let us thank the Lord for the day he's given us. Another passage in Matthew comes to mind where it says, don't be anxious about tomorrow. Today has enough things in it. And so with that, I want to encourage you all to continue tuning in to the services. If you're able to come to the church, certainly want to encourage you to do so. It's been such a blessing to be able to get back together. We miss so many of you that have not been able to come, but are looking forward to the day when we can all gather together. So remember, love one another, pray for one another, pray for the leadership of our country, pray for the leadership of our church, pray for one another, brothers and sisters. And until we meet each other again, good evening and God bless.